Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and on today's video we are going to be pixel peeping and checking the FSR 3.1. Yes, my friends, and as it happened yesterday, AMD just released and announced that 6 games had the technology already implemented. Okay, well, they say 6 games, but it's actually 5 because one of them has not come out yet, which is God of War Ragnarok. It's also curious the fact that all 6 games belong to PlayStation Studios, and they are Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Forbidden West, and the one I just said, the God of War Ragnarok. So when the FSR 3.1 was first named, AMD said that they were going to release that with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So because I am a very prepared person, then I went and I recorded a whole section of the game with just FSR 3.0, just preparing to then do the comparisons with FSR 3.1. The thing is, I didn't expect them to also release it on so many other games. Unfortunately, now I don't have footage from FSR 3.0 from those games. But well, I still have some comparison we are going to be doing. But I want to just clarify something. On today's video, we are only going to take a look at the FSR reconstruction, okay, image, not the FSR frame generation, which has also received improvement. Today is all about reconstruction because we know that's, from my point of view, is the worst part of the technology. While the frame generation is not up there with the DLSS 3 frame generation, is still quite good compared to the image reconstruction, which leaves a lot to be desired sometimes. But before we get into the comparisons, let me tell you something. Do you know that 80% of the people to watch this video, all those views you have there, are from people not subscribed to the channel? And I am not sure why. I think the content is great, and subscribing is completely free, liking is completely free, so you will be helping me a lot if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. So now let's go to the comparisons and my thoughts on the new FSR 3.1. Okay, so the first game I'm going to be testing here is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I have here the FSR 3.0, I have 3.1 here, I have native and here, and then DLSS here. All of them are using the quality preset, okay, the reconstruction. This is just to give the best chance, and they are reconstructing to 4K. Okay, now let's start comparisons. I'm going to be jumping to different areas just randomly because the playback of 4 videos, unfortunately for this software, is still quite bad. NVIDIA needs to improve that, so doing playback is not going to be the best, and I'm going to show you. But let's start just by showing you one of the first problems we can easily see when it comes to FSR 3.0. As you can see here in the image, you can see how this is kind of pixelated, right? And that's because there is lots of movement with this. There is some movement and that creates that pixelization. And initially you can see that 3.1 doesn't really improve. It improves a little, but then we see like this area here is still a little bit bad, and it seems that there is not much different. But we are going to see that there is, especially if we compare native, you see that still there is some haloing and stuff, so it's not so bad. And especially when you will look at like at the normal distance and not zoom in, they all look quite good. However, let's try to move a little bit over and you are going to start seeing what I mean. You see now here how this movement has created all this pixelization, and you can see here in the lights how pixelated it is. And this is a problem with FSR, a lot of noise and this occlusion creating problems. When we compare that to FSR 3.1, even though it's not perfect, you can see there is a clear improvement in quality. You see here, by the way, it's kind of funny that I didn't realize there is a lot of variation in Ratchet and Clank characters and things in the intro, because they change like colors. You can see that the ship here is completely different colors. I didn't know that happened in the game, but anyway, so as you can see here, there is a lot less noise than we were seeing initially. So we keep moving. As you can see, it's very slow, and this one is always on the back for some reason. And when we go here, look at this. So you can see here how this is absolutely pixelated, you know, because of the movement, because of the disocclusion, because of, you know, it's creating these lots of artifacts and things that are not good. Yes, when you look at them at a normal distance, they don't look that different, but there is something going on that is different from DLSS and native, and you can see it. The native and DLSS look much better than FSR 3.0. Look at this mess. While 3.1 looks much closer to the native. Okay, it's not perfect, it's not as good as DLSS, but it's much better than before. So I will say there is a clear improvement here. If we move up a little bit more, let's start. You see more of that issue that I've been talking in movement. You see how this whole thing here, look at the arm, look at the shoulders, look at the neck, look at all of this, and when you compare it with FSR 3.1, you can see there is a clear improvement. There is still some like noise and some pixelization here. It's not as good, especially compared to like the native and DLSS. Yes, those are better, and you see some haloing here, which is also a little bit of ghosting. So I'd say yes, FSR is still not as good as DLSS. It's not, you know, super close either, but it's an improvement over FSR 3.0 for sure. And when we're looking at a normal distance, yes, we can see clearly here the problems FSR 3.0 has, and we see some of the problems 3.1, but they are less noticeable, okay, than we were seeing before. And you can see this in movement. Look, this image here, look how it looks here. You can see it is so much better in FSR 3.1. It's still much better, of course, because of the depth of field and so on in the native and DLSS, but I will say that it still looks phenomenal in 3.1, or at least that the improvement has been quite big. Okay, so let's keep moving. Let's find some other areas that we can try. Look, you can keep seeing on this here. Look how pixelated it gets here and how good it looks here. And of course, native is going to always be the best, so that's not a debate. Okay, let me jump. There is a particular area that I want to try. Well, here we see a little bit. Oops, I pressed to pause, but it didn't pause, so it's not paying attention to what I'm doing or saying. In some areas there, you see a little bit of improvement, not too much, because the image itself doesn't, you know, lend itself to improve that much. Let's just jump more. Let's find another area. Okay, we maybe. I sometimes hate this software. It's so good for comparisons, but when you want to do, like, you know, many videos, is still hard. In this case, well, you know, there is a little bit of improvement because, well, the image doesn't really break that much in this case, so there is no need for big improvements. As you see, there is nothing there that looks particularly much better than it was before. Was looking for some other areas to compare, but I cannot see the area I was looking for, so let me continue here. Okay, here, this is another area. You can see here movement and how it's much better here. Here we can still see that it's kind of hard for FSR to resolve the blur, as you can see here, while a native and DLSS does a much better job. However, when we compare FSR 3.1 against FSR 3.0, you can clearly see there is a big improvement, especially in this area. You see how this is smoother and this all is pixelated. I think that's a big win for FSR 3.1. So let's jump to almost to the end, where there is a scene that I want to show you. I don't know how close to the end that scene was. Well, we can see here what I wanted to show. You see, this is more of the same, more pixelization here, more. You see here, you cannot make like the fur very well, and you can see it a lot better in FSR 3.1. Look, compare this to this. there is clear improvement. Of course, it's not as good as these two, but there is a clear improvement in image quality in FSR 3.1 on every level compared to FSR 3.0. Do I think they have solved all the issues? No, not even close. Of course not. There is still a lot of things that they need to solve, but I think it's much better. Okay, this is the image I wanted to show. So why? Because there is movement. She's running, and look at this, how this gets all scrambled, all pixelated, while it's much more stable in FSR 3.1. So as you can see, there is a clear improvement, and we are going to see another part of the game just to show you how much this improvement is there. Okay, so continuing with Ratchet, let's go to the next part of the intro. Okay, well, we go to Ratchet itself. So you can see here, just starting just like this, it doesn't look too much difference, but when we get close to it, you can see that the fur is much more detailed in the FSR 3.1. okay, I have ditched the native version in this case. Okay, so but here you can see, for example, even the teeth are pixelated while they are much defined here. Okay, so if we keep moving, because it's much easier to move now with just 3 videos instead of 4, okay, even if it's not perfect, we can still see, you see what I mean. Look at how the fur here is more defined while here is all pixelated, and this pixelization even goes to something as the eye. So there is much more detail in here, but let's go a little bit outside. Well, let's compare a little bit of Clank here, just to show you that the reflections, and are more pixelated here than they are in the other two techniques. Look, everything is a lot more noisy, more. It looks quite decent from a distance, but it's much more pleasant on 3.1. Of course, it depends on what's happening on the screen. But let's keep going just a second, just to show you what I mean in the next area of this intro. Okay, so when we get out here, look at this area. Look at how all the lights, all the background. Look at the fire from the engines, how they are super pixelated. Well, this is probably not the best example, because there is something occluding here, but you can see it here under it. Okay, you can see how much better it is. And if we go to this part of here, look, FSR 3.1 resolved better, and look at the depth of field. The bokeh is much defined. It's almost perfect here in DLSS, I have to say, but it looks so much nicer here compared to FSR 3.0. Look at here, the flag, for example. You see here is nice and blurry, and here is all pixelated. So that's quite an important part. Look at here on movement, how this one is a lot more pixelated than it is on FSR 3.1. So there is clearly showing that there is improvement in FSR 3.1, and we can keep seeing these examples here and these little like details. Look how much nicer is here. It's much nicer in DLSS, there is no doubt about that, but compare FSR 3.0 with 3.1, and when we look them just at the normal distance, the image is more pleasant on 3.1 if you just try to look and compare to 3.0. But if we go a little further here, look at here when he's moving his hand. Okay, look how during the movement you can see that this one gets all shimmering, vibrating, pixelated, and the one on 3.1 is much better looking than the other one. So it's clear that there has been an improvement, okay, at least with this game, but it's only with this game. So now let's check Horizon Forbidden West. So now I'm going to be testing Horizon Forbidden West. Unfortunately, I don't have any FSR 3.0 recording because I didn't know they were going to release it this way, so I didn't record in advance. However, I'm going to be testing against 4K native without any sort of anti-alias technique applied to it, and then we are going to be testing FSR 3.1 and 4K DLSS both on performance mode. So it means that they are reconstructing for 1080p. So we put this FSR 3.1 reconstruction more to the test. Okay, this is the whole intro, and I am obviously not going to watch the whole intro because otherwise we'll be here for an hour while talking about different areas. So I'm going to be jumping on different areas of the game that I sort of remember and check some things. Okay, so well, as you can see here, just to explain, look how this means raw pixel, not anti-alias apply. As you can see here, this looks, you know, very, very raw. And now it's interesting because we can already see how the techniques work. Here is FSR 3.1 and here is DLSS. And I will say that you can see more pixelization here than here, but well, that's okay. However, the part that I want to show you, that is one of the biggest problem FSR hasn't been able to solve, is that while the FSR 3.1 has improved a lot, there is one thing that it doesn't know how to deal with, and that's, let's look at this. Look at here. Okay, so look at this. You see how the trail of the fox is in there. Look, here is completely clean, and here is also completely clean compared to FSR 3.1. And why is this happening? You see, there is lots more pixelization here on the sides and all of that, while here is much cleaner. But the reason this is happening here on FSR 3.1 is not just because of the disocclusion, because disocclusion will be something like this. You see under the paw, you can see that there is a lot of grainy shimmering and noise because it is trying to reconstruct that. But what's happening here is that, as you know, while objects move, the FSR needs to understand where the object was and how it's reconstructing from previous object, okay, from previous frame, sorry. So the problem with this is that what's happening is that because this is a very noisy part of the image, so FSR doesn't understand what pixels here belong to the fox that are not supposed to be there in the next frame, while DLSS does a much better job understanding on previous frame while reconstructing how that they belong to the fox. While here, no, because it's so noisy, all this area, you know, there is lots of grass and branch tree and so on, that then it doesn't understand which one of those extra pixels in there are from the fox, and it leaves them, and this happens, you know, leaving this trail, you see. Then after 2 or 3 more frames, and you saw there, okay, if we go back, it does clean up the image, but it takes more frames to understand, because when you see now we have a clean image here, okay, but if we keep going back, you're going to see that what happened is that it took more frames for the technique to understand which frame belong or which frames didn't belong to. Okay, let me go back this way, because otherwise I think this is gonna take too much. Okay, so you see here we still have some of the frames. If we move little by little, now look, at some point it starts cleaning up the image, because having been able to see more and more frames, now it understands which frames belong to the fox that were not supposed to be there. Okay, so well, in this next you can see how you know, still pixelated around the edges of both the bokeh depth of field areas. FSR is still not able to resolve it very well. However, we need to understand that we are doing pixel peeping here. While looking for a normal distance, there is still a slight issues, but it's much better than what we got initially with FSR 3.0. I'm going to move a little bit forward to another area. I think it's this one. Yep, this one here. Okay, just to show you that when it's reconstructing details, it's quite good. As you can see here, there is not much difference between FSR and DLSS. You can see here on the distance that all of those looks almost identical, so they are reconstructing very good, and that's because there are small details that are basically not moving. However, the problem is still with FSR is the moving parts of the image. You can see here that how much and how lots of pixelization and noise it generates when there are objects moving around, because it's not very good at cleaning up or at taking the disocclusion and being able to clean up before reconstructing it. It's like it's getting the raw pixel and not applying any sort of anti-alias or something. While you see here that DLSS does suffer from that. You see all this, look how much better it looks in DLSS. And we are talking about coming from 1080p to 4K. Well, when we see this image at a normal resolution, okay, you still can see some of the issues around here, or maybe around the character, because this looks, but you know, when it's in movement there is some issues, but I don't think they're so big or distracting. Okay, I think the issue was much prominent when we were playing with FSR 3.0. This is an area that is going to show you a little bit more about what I was saying before. Okay, but it needs to stop when I tell it to stop. if I want to show this. Okay, let me go a little bit back just to show you what I mean. Okay, so well, I hope you can see it. It's not exactly this area, the one I wanted to try. Let me go, I'm going to go a little bit back because just to show you. Okay, here it is. So you see the problem here again, we have ghosting, right? But if the problem was any moving object, then why don't we have that same ghosting in this area of the image, which is also moving? And the reason is because, as I said, this area has a lot of more colors and pixels, noise, to call it in a way, because the image is composed of trees and other things. And here is where it has issue understanding what pixels belong to the this flying machine instead of here, because this area is cleaner. It's easier for FSR to clean up those, while here it seems that it's a little bit afraid that by cleaning these things it's also cleaning whatever is supposed to be on the background, while DLSS is doing a much better job, as you can see here, okay, which is not happening here because it's like FSR doesn't want or don't understand what is supposed to clean from previous frames. It does a very good job here, okay, because there is no color noise on the background. It's easier to understand than it is here, okay? So as you can see, that happens here, but it doesn't happen in these areas where the colors are less, you know, noisy for it to understand. So if we go a little bit further, we can still see, and there is, you know, when we see a movement, it looks quite good. I saw all three intros. I saw the intro 3 times and I was testing, and it honestly looks quite good. It's much better than before, but you know, those problems are still there. FSR is much better, but it's still not as good as DLSS. I wouldn't say even as close as DLSS, because still there's lots of issues. As you can see, it still has problems with anything that is moving around. But let me go and show you another part that is interesting. Well, we have here, you know, rain. There, you see, it doesn't look bad at all from my point of view, even though there is these all movements and all. It's a little more break, maybe, you know, there is more break up in the lines that are supposed to compose the you can see clearly here, you know. But you know, they move fast. I don't think you are going to notice that much, so it's okay. Look, when we see images like this, then it's really hard to even see the difference between all three if we were not just comparing. So that means FSR is doing something good, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, this okay, around here there is this part that I thought it was funny, the way none of the technique actually know how to resolve that. Look here. I mean, okay, here. So look, this part here, okay, this part and this you're going to see on different areas, okay. The reconstruction is quite good while looking at here, right? No problem with FSR 3.1, but this part here, for some reason, look at how it's supposed to look. And here, even though it looks now sort of okay, and here both technique, DLSS and FSR, becomes a mess. Look, a real mess while moving, because they have no idea how to reconstruct that. In the case of DLSS, it's becoming mushy, and in the case of FSR, it's becoming completely pixelated. Look, it's really they don't know what to do with that area there, okay. And that's something I thought it was interesting to show. But see, once again, the problem, you see how much ghosting, vibration and noise the image is when there is lots of things in movement, and you can notice that even on here. So in general, the image looks much cleaner and is still, you know, preferable to not being able to achieve your FPS, but still FSR has a way to not be as good as it should. It's better, but I think it could be better, or it should be better in certain areas, but I don't know if it's possible. And AMD will finally have to go to FSR 4 with some form of AI to be able to clean that. I'm not sure. I don't understand the logic behind the algorithm or other reasons why things have to be the way they're supposed to, because you can see in areas of high contrast how FSR is creating these lines around the lines, okay. Well, they are not present in the other two techniques. and those are things that you can kind of see while even in movement. So if we keep going, just jumping from one place to the next, okay, look, when things are not very hectic and so on, they look quite decent, even though there is always some sort of shimmering around moving objects, as you can see in Aloy's hair. But look, in general, it's a much better and improved image. I have no issues with that. Okay, remember, I'm not, you know, trying to destroy FSR, but we are testing and we have to be honest and true. I think it's a very good option, of course, but it still have some ways to go, because it's still not as good or perfect as the competition, for example. I will dare to say that even XESS is better. So now let's go look in areas like this. Look at that. It looks quite decent, quite good, to be honest. You see, there is, because you know, the characters are just there. But now let's see like a gameplay part of this, and I'm going to show you something. Look, in this area there is a lot of noise and shimmering, right? Because of course there is. And now look at what happens when she moves around and leaves behind all of this. And look, this is not happening here, and obviously it's not happening here. And it's happening here because, as again, there is a lot of different colors and noise in the background, and FSR is not able to understand exactly what it needs to clean. Look, when there is movement, all of this is created, and you will say that that's something you can even see at the normal distance, normal resolution. It's not as noticeable as it was before, but it's definitely there. Look. So yeah, these are the comparisons. Now let's see a 1080p video. I may just do, you know, push these things a little bit further, and then I come back with my conclusions.
Bitter?
No, just to make you feel better. Alright, we should keep going.
Might want to grab more of these plants along the way.
Yeah, good idea. Those ruins. That's where we need to go.
I see a few ways down. What are we after exactly?
The backup? Well, it's an AI. It's, think of it like a set of instructions that can fix the world.
Sounds complicated.
Okay, everyone. So after watching all the comparisons, we have to agree that FSR 3.1 is clearly a step in the right direction, and that there are clear improvements on image quality. Many of the areas that were having issues before, that got pixelated or that had issues, have improved. However, this doesn't mean that FSR 3.1 has solved all the main issues that the FSR 3.0 had, and we're talking only about the image reconstruction part of it. The frame generation, we are going to be touching on a different video, but the thing is that the frame generation was already very good. The main problem is that because frame generation works together with FSR, then most of the problem of frame generation are due to the FSR implementation, the normal, you know, reconstruction, because that's where the shimmering and noise comes from. So we have seen that a lot of the noise has been reduced, but where it hasn't, you know, been solved completely is when it comes to movement and this occlusion. There is still noise and shimmering. It's less than before, but it's still available. and also with ghosting. As we saw on the examples, we see that where there is a lot of other colors and things going in the background, FSR doesn't understand very well what it should be removing from the image, generating more ghosting than in areas where the colors are more, let's say, uniform. So this is a problem that needs to be solved somehow, because it really gives a bad appearance. Now, the main problem here is that normally, you know, for a normal viewing distance, there is not much of a problem, and the image quality is normally very good. In the examples we have been using, we use intros where, you know, there is no actual real gameplay going on as is. But when you start playing with a third-person character in the middle of the screen, that's when FSR falls apart a little bit, because you are going to see this character in front, always moving, disoccluding objects, and that's where the noise and the problems come from. And that's the part where FSR 3.1 has improved, but it still has issues that are clearly visible even for a normal distance viewing. Games on first person, they are not as much problematic with this, because they normally don't create this sort of issues. However, there are games like Eternals of Aveum or Immortals of Aveum, sorry, that has this issue, or when, you know, some movement with the hand, doing some transformation with the weapon, and you can clearly see that issue. Unfortunately, Immortals of Aveum didn't implement FSR 3.1 to see if that has improved in any way, so we don't know. We will have to wait, especially on console, to see how much improvement FSR 3.1 do on these titles. However, I have to say that I'm not trying to destroy the technology or anything, or discard it. I think there is a lot of improvement, that now it looks much better than it used to. There is a lot noisy, a lot less shimmer, and a lot less vibration, which is a good thing. But unfortunately, it doesn't solve all the issues, and I don't know if they can be solved with the allotted time the algorithm has to work. Because remember, at the end of the day, this algorithm needs to be fast, because the idea is to improve frame rate. Maybe they can do it very good and image quality, but it takes too long to prepare, making it that the game runs slower with you using FSR than without. So maybe the next iteration of FSR 4, is when AMD has finally decided that it's time to start using their cores for AI and prepare a different you know, solution. We don't know what's going to happen. I think FSR 3.1 is probably getting to the point where there is not much more image quality that they can extract from it without going over budget in time, and, you know, in process time. So we have to see. However, I think FSR 3.1 is good news. It's always good to see improvements, otherwise we could continue to use FSR 3.0. Many people are still using it, and it's good enough. But if they can improve on it and release 3.1, you know, that's good news to me. And there are clear advantages of using it, and it does clearly improve the image quality. So I don't see any, you know, issues with that. It's a win-win for everyone, because, well, at the end of the day, anything that makes your games look better and makes you pay more for the privilege, then for me is a win in my book. So thank you very much for that. I hope you like this video, and as always, see you on the next one.